we doing? Hey, good afternoon, good morning, whichever one you want to accept as being the time. Harlan's here with me. We also have a special guest we're going to bring in a couple of minutes. Until then, Harlan's just going to jump around here and tell you some of the things, in case you were living under a rock over the weekend, some of the big things that have taken place. The biggest maybe right now, right, Harlan, is that as we were getting prepared for this, Neil Gorsuch was sworn in as the next justice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is probably, I think we said on Friday's show, that oftentimes a presidency is defined by a Supreme Court picks. And so, this is not to take away from this moment at all. I mean, I think in some ways it may have been overshadowed by some of the terror events that have happened over the last week, all attributed to ISIS. But, this is not just a momentous occasion in Neil Gorsuch's life, but probably a defining moment in the president's life. Speaking of some of those terror attacks, I'm sure if you were paying attention to what we had on DennisMichaelLynch.com, you know what happened. But in Cairo, we had this church bombing where 43 were killed and over 100 were wounded. This was an ISIS bomber took credit for it. They detonated the bomb outside of an Egyptian church and turned away by 3 police officers. Otherwise, he would have been able to kill many more people. There were actually 2 attacks, and 45 Christians were taken, 43 Christian lives were taken, all told. So, I mean, this just underlines that the threat of ISIS is real. It is, unfortunately, it comes in the shadow of what happened in Sweden. And, I don't really understand how anyone at this point, Dennis, could stand up and say that, we're not at war with ISIS or radical Islamic terror. I mean, we just came out of a presidential election cycle where, one of the 2 parties refused to even name the enemy that we had. But meanwhile, in Europe, we're seeing a really stark change. I mean, one of my biggest takeaways from the weekend was that the Swedish Prime Minister said that, quote, "We will never go back to the days of mass immigration." He said this after that truck, struck a crowded department store in Sweden. And we later found out that the 4 people that were killed, their lives were taken by a failed asylum seeker. The Prime Minister has pledged to change the country's liberal attitude towards massive influxes of migrants. They said that we wouldn't fall for that mistake again. They're worried about copycats because it's so easy now. You can just go get a truck and run it into a crowded area and take many lives in the process and scare people from going out and living their everyday lives.
Yep. And then on top of that, the next thing you've got is, we're going to talk about a little bit of this. We have a special guest who I think has an airplane flying over his condominium right now. If it's not him have an airplane flying over a condominium, I hear what sounds like an airplane, right? So I don't know if that's him or not. We also have Iran and Russia threatening the United States that if we take action again against against Syria, that we are in for a retaliation attack. But we're going to get into all that. What I want to do now, I guess the plane went past, that the noise is gone.
Any idea, Tim?
It sounded like an airplane to me, right? Well, I know John is high up in a condominium. No, he's saying no, he didn't have any. All right, maybe it's the Facebook witches. Who knows?
They're trolling us.
Yeah, they're doing something. Or it could be John's air conditioning unit. That's the other thing. No. All right. Well, listen. Before I introduce John, actually, no. You know what? I'll introduce John now. But I'm gonna give you a little prelude. Now, get off John for a second. Come back to me. Thank you. Next time, please wait until I call his name. So I want to give you a little background on John Rowland. For those of you who are not from New York, for those of you who are watching us from New York, this is going to come to no surprise to you. In fact, this is a special treat for you today. I started making a film. I got into films about, going back, 2009, I think it was, that I decided to go out and make my first film. It was this thing called King of the Hamptons. It was really a whole lot of nothing. just me running around with the camera saying, let me try to figure out how to do something. And I interviewed celebrities, and Alec Baldwin was one of them. Oh, what a piece of work he is. But Christy Brinkley and all these other different people. So along the way, one of the guys who was helping me make this movie said, you could really use some media training. And so I said, yeah, well, who's going to give me that training? He says, you ever hear of a guy named John Rowland? I said, John Rowland? I said, he's been in my kitchen every single day for the past, who knows, 20-something years. My dad would watch him religiously. My mom, the same thing. John Rowland, pretty much, for most of his time anchoring Fox News on Channel 5 here in New York, he was the go-to guy. He was the most popular guy. He was the most trusted guy. He was basically in everybody's living room at 10 p.m. He was the #1 show, for year after year after year. So anyway, so I said, yeah, who am I to say no? I'd love to meet this guy, So I go to his home, his beautiful home out in the Hamptons, also known as the East End of Long Island. And although I had never met him before, he treated me like absolute gold. Absolute gold, with the exception of the fact of him telling me that I had no presence. And that's what my problem was from a media perspective. So long story short, he took me under his wing, and we went from creating a scene for a documentary to becoming friends, to making films together, to actually to the point of where we are now, full disclosure, celebrating Thanksgiving together, his family and my family together. We do that. He is full disclosure here, he is like an uncle to me. We're like family. I love him dearly. I could never even come up with anything bad to say. If somebody tried to, I would put them on their buttocks faster than they could say the names John Rowland. So what we're going to do is I asked John if he would come on today because I think that the media treatment of Donald Trump has become so bad, has become so ridiculous, that he, better than anybody, could really explain to you what takes place behind the scenes and why it is that it's taking place. He's going to give us some of his stories from yesterday, if you will. He also knows Donald Trump very, very well. And again, another full disclosure, John Rowland is a fan of yours truly. He was the treasurer of my exploratory committee, if you will, and he could vouch for the fact that I gave back every dime to every donor, despite the fact that legally I did not have to. In fact, many people told me, don't give it back, reimburse yourself, and I said no, and I went about that. So he will be somebody finally who could say, yes, that is the truth. But before we do that, let me give you a real quick clip that just shows 3 highlights of when John was actually anchoring the 10 p.m. news here in New York. Tim, play it.
And as you said, a big night for President Clinton on his way to becoming the first Democrat re-elected president since Franklin Roosevelt.
Back when George Bush ran for president a couple of years ago, he made a promise that he would not raise taxes. It helped to get him elected, but some people did not think he would be able to keep that promise, and now it looks like they were right. Good evening, Coran's on vacation. There was shake, rattle, and roll tonight. The Sheikh was arrested on immigration charges, but before that happened, federal agents rattled. They thought they lost him, but he's in custody and rolling to a lockup north of the city. George Smith reports. All right, so without further ado, I would like to introduce to you the legendary newsman, John Rowland, and dear friend of mine, coming to us from North Miami, Florida. John, it is fantastic to see you, and you are ageless, my friend.
Well, I'll tell you, great to see you too, Dennis. And may I congratulate you on creating this platform where you're spreading the truth through the tons and tons of fake and far left news that is flying through the air out there. It's really a service that you're doing for the country. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, John. And again, we could just do the little buttocks kissing here back and forth for a couple of minutes. John, John knows. When I used to tell John all the time, whenever I was on Fox News, especially on the Megyn Kelly's show, it was live. So John would always watch me, and the second I got down into my car and I got out of the green room, I'd get into the car and I'd auto-dial the first person, and it wasn't my dear wife Mary, it was John. And I'd say, okay, give it to me straight. And he would tell me all the different things that I did wrong because he knew that that's what I wanted. I wanted the constructive criticism so I could get better and better and better. And so John would really, John, I owe it to you. Anything that I have any talents that I have today, you were the person who was able to grab that out of me and get it out to the camera. And I want to show you another clip which really shows how much John taught me, because seeing this clip is where it is that I think I got my personality from when it comes to a news perspective. Tim, can you please play this clip of John Rowland, maybe at his most serious moment on Fox 5? All right, finally from Davie, California. A 12-year-old boy, just like any other, was trying to go to Disney World. But he was a little too, shall we say, over-enthusiastic. He stole the family car, climbed down a sheet from his bedroom window late at night, hopped in the car, and took off. You know, John, that's a very good look for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that.
All right,
In fact, all the nice things I said.
All right, so let's get into some serious stuff now. We've got a pretty good crowd. We let the crowd build up. So, John, question. How long have you known Donald Trump?
Well, I've known of him since the 70s. I really got to know him, I think it was like around 1983 or 82 when Trump Tower was built. And I went to a news conference, and with Donald, there were a lot of people there. He was hyping, as only he could do, his accomplishment to build Trump Tower and telling everybody about how many apartments were sold, one of which was sold to Prince Charles. So we went through the news conference, and I was skeptical. Back in those days, reporters were skeptical. They weren't spoon-fed like so many of them are today. They didn't take everybody just at their word. I was skeptical about the Prince Charles thing. I called England. I called the Prince Charles office, whatever the heck you call it. I don't know that. And they said, no, Prince Charles never bought anything in Trump Tower. We don't even know where that is. We don't know what it is. So that night I went on the air and I said, no matter, and I did the story, and I said, oh, by the way, no matter what you hear or who you heard it from, it's not true that Prince Charles bought an apartment. But in the meantime, what I did before that was I called Donald and I said, Donald, the palace tells me that's not true. He said, well, you call my PR guy, you call my public relations guy, and he will tell you that in fact it is true and prove it to you. Okay, what's his name? To this day I don't remember his name, Dennis. It was John Lord, John, whatever name he gave me, John Miller, something like that. So I called back and I'm talking to the PR guy and he says, oh yeah, and we have this to show and that to prove. And I said, wait a second, Donald, is that you? It was in fact Donald. He gave me a phony name. It was his own public relations guy, because nobody could do it better than him. Nobody does public relations and understands the news media then, and especially to this day, better than himself. So we became friends after that, and he liked what I did because he didn't take me as a yes man. He doesn't like yes men. He likes you, like you, to give it to you straight, to tell you his faults, to tell you his ups, his downs. That's what he likes to hear. So we became, I don't want to say close buddies, but we became friends. We became acquaintances. I went down to his casino a few times on his helicopter. I had lunch with him. I went to one of his weddings. I became not only a friend, but a fan. And I think, Dennis, when I talk about being a fan, and I am, truth be told, I believe that from the time Donald went to military school, from the time that he was working with his father and learning to be a businessman, learning to trade from the ground up, learning how to network, meeting people from around the world, and learning to get along with the unions, and learning to, and raising a terrific family at the same time. I believe all of that was tremendous preparation for him to become the President of the United States. I believe that in so many years that we've been through with presidents, he may be one of the most qualified men to ever hold that office that we've ever had. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but those people who disagree with that don't know him.
So when you see and hear all the different news that comes out on Donald Trump, president, being a news guy yourself, you were 40 years, right? 40 years before you retired?
Yes.
Okay. One of the biggest things that we have right now in the country, as you know, John, is this, and you opened it up by complimenting us for what we're doing, and I appreciate that. But right now in America, it is so hard for people to discern between what is fake, what is bias, what is real, what is true. And just knowing you and the conversations we've had, I know you've never seen it this bad before. But when you hear and see what they're doing to Donald Trump, is it the worst you've ever seen in terms of how they're treating a president?
Oh, there isn't any question about that. It is certainly the worst that it's ever been. And it comes from all over the place. Remember, when he ran, he had to beat 16, 17 opponents. He was running against the Democratic Party. He was running against the Clinton machine. He was running against his own party. Even they weren't supporting him for a long time. And he was running against the news media. Now, why was he running against the news media? Well, today the news media has become, sadly, an extension, an arm of the Democratic Party. Or the Democratic Party has become an extension of the news media. It's almost difficult to tell these days.
Well, and I've noticed, John, that it's become increasingly hysterical. You know, just this past weekend, we had MSNBC, we had a leading anchor of the 10 p.m. slot on MSNBC alleging that there's this massive conspiracy that Vladimir Putin has executed where he told Assad to use chemical weapons so that it would help President Donald Trump politically here in the United States. That there is this big conspiracy executed by Vladimir Putin to massacre people using chemical weapons to help President Donald Trump. Forgetting the fact that that claim is totally unsubstantiated by the facts. But these sorts of outrageous claims have been made, they're just accepted by the mainstream media now. We also had, and we can play this clip, we had a CNN, we had Jake Tapper over the weekend say that President Donald Trump was potentially starting World War III. I mean, it's hysterical. I mean, it's so outrageous, John. I mean, it's not just that they're out to it's not just they're out to undermine President Donald Trump. It's that they're able to now get away with outright fabrications without any sort of question or pushback from the public or from their peers in the media.
Yeah, you know what, John? Let us play this clip. This clip, when I saw this taking place, I was watching this yesterday. I could not believe my ears of what Jake Tapper had to say. Go ahead, play it, Tim.
About this being a potential quagmire, about this potentially starting World War III?
I can tell you that of the conversations I had this week, he knew what the risks were, he knew what the situation was, he looked at the history of the situation, and he decided. And I think his decision was right, and I think you can see that from the international community. They all fully support it.
Now, John, you know that had this been Obama who blew up who threw out 59 Tomahawk missiles, they wouldn't have said anything. They would have been praising him.
They would have been praising him. Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, John, there's a story that I want you to tell, which I think people need to hear. And you told it in my movie, We Ride to D.C., but a lot of the people here probably haven't watched that. Go back to when you worked at NBC and you were covering Reagan, what it is that the producers asked you to do. Set it up.
Well, when I first got into the news business, it was at KNBC in Los Angeles. I started off as basically what they used to call a copy boy. Today it's a production assistant. But I would run for copy and give it to the reporters. I'd go out and get lunch. I'd get sandwiches. I would do whatever was necessary, trying to work my way up the ladder. And one day my news director said to me, Ronald Reagan he was running for governor at the time, and he's going to be at a dinner, and we need somebody to go there and just hold the cameraman's hand more or less and make sure that he rules on everything that Reagan does and says. We're not going to send a reporter, we just want you to go along as a production assistant. So I said, great, that would be great. So I went, and we filmed him. We filmed Mr. Reagan the whole evening, having dinner, speaking, everything else. So I came back, and my news director was one of the guests that night at the dinner, at one of the tables. So he said to me, sometime during that dinner, I was watching Ronald Reagan very closely. He was starting to eat, and he picked up his fork, and he put it to his mouth, and the food fell off the fork. That's what I want you to find in the roll of film. Back in those days, it was film. It was black and white. It was a huge roll of film, a couple of hours worth. So I went into a room, they put on a projector, and I started watching it. I found that particular part where Mr. Reagan was eating, dropped it off of his plate, made him look bad. That's what we used on the air that night. Bill said that's what we're going to show. He was a big Pat Brown supporter, was running for governor at the same time, and he did not want Ronald Reagan to win. And that showed you how prejudiced things could be, just by doing something like that. You can take an interview, and they do it today. They did it with Hannity the other night when he was on with, what's his name, they used to do Nightline all the time.
Koppel.
Koppel. And they did an interview with Hannity where Koppel said that Hannity was bad for America because he was putting facts over, putting ideology over facts, the conservative ideology, as if liberalism isn't an ideology.
Yeah.
Liberals think that that's just the air. They think it's the mountains. They think it's the sea. They do not believe that it too is an ideology. And that's part of today's problem with President Trump. He has fought through and shattered the myth that liberalism is part of the atmosphere, that it's part of everybody's DNA. And anybody who tries to change that is evil. And conservatism, republicanism, is a bad, evil ideology that goes against facts, when obviously the opposite is true.
Well,
that's part of the fury that is feeding the flames that are trying to engulf President Trump. They are so shattered, they are so frightened and discombobulated, they still cannot accept the fact that this outsider, the man who paid for his own campaign, remember, he funded his own campaign. Millions and millions of, they can't believe it. The lobbyists hate him. All the people that try to get influence through the president's office, they all hate him because he is affecting their jobs, their livelihood. And their livelihood isn't creating anything. It's just government. It's nothing but big government. They are scared to death of him. That's a big part of the problem.
The mistake they keep making in the mainstream media is that they think that they're doing something different than Hannity. Hannity isn't a straight news guy. He's not a journalist. Right?
No, he's an opinion guy.
He's an opinion guy.
And he says it right out there.
Exactly. And they think, somebody like Ted Koppel or somebody like Brian Williams, they think that they're doing something different. They think they're being objective journalists.
Right.
And they're not. They're just as opinionated as somebody like Hannity, but they do it under the guise of this journalism. And it's just false.
They are just hypocrites.
Absolutely. John, John, let me ask you a question.
Actors are like that. Jake is like that. I hate to say it. All of the current anchors anchoring the mainstream news media programs, writing for the Times, the New York Times, what it said, paper that's become, the LA Times, the big newspapers. The Wall Street Journal is still pretty good. You can still pretty much get the straight skinny from the Wall Street Journal, but it's one of the very last and very few. It's very sad what's happened to the profession.
It's funny you say that. It's
funny you just cannot trust it. You have to dig for yourself. You've got to, and even when you go on the internet, you don't know what the heck you're reading.
It's funny you say that, John, because I always talk to people about where it is that we get our information, and I have my writers for DennisMichaelLynch.com. We go through what I call it's an algorithm. It's really just a process. It's a process of what it is that I will and will not post up, and how it is that we will and will not post something up. And Wall Street Journal, to me, remains at the top of the list. If it's on the Wall Street Journal, I will pretty much 9.5 out of 10 times feel comfortable about the fact that we're about to put that out there. But they are a very, very, very rare breed, to your point. I want to shift gears here for a second, because You have so much wisdom. You have interviewed so many people over the course of time. I have a couple of questions that I want to ask, and it's going to lead up to a bigger question. You may figure out where I'm going with this at some point, but just the best you possibly can. Give me the quickest you can. Take Trump out of the equation. Over your lifetime, and if you could sort of narrow it down to your adult lifetime, who was the best president in the United States?
Ronald Reagan.
After Ronald Reagan, who would you pick?
Probably President Bush.
Which one?
The younger.
The younger one. Okay. So when you look at those two, now I didn't know that you were going to say that, although Reagan's kind of a layup. When you look at those two, and let's put them to the side, now I want you to give me the number 1 and 2 worst presidents in your lifetime.
Obama and Carter.
And Carter. Okay.
That was a layup.
That was a layup too. I'd imagine number 3 is going to be Clinton. Okay. Now, John, I want you to take this. You've got Reagan and Bush, and you've got Carter and Obama. Obama and Carter were absolute disasters. Bush and Reagan, Reagan great, Bush pretty good, I think, as well. When you take a look at, you're spanning since 1970 going all the way up to 2016. That is a 46-year span. When it comes to the media and how they treated the worst two versus how they treated the best two, has anything changed, or has it always been like this?
Well, it has always been like this to a certain extent, but it's gotten a lot worse. They treated Reagan very, very badly, despite his tremendous accomplishments, because again, he was conservative. The media has always been liberal. It's always been run by and operated by and permeated with liberals. But we were professional enough not to show where we stood on any given issue. When I was on the air, I used to get hate mail from Arabs and from Jews saying, well, how can you be so pro-Arab, or how can you be so pro-Israel? And I knew I was doing my job right because I was getting mail from both sides. That doesn't happen today. Today, it's very obvious who is supporting whom. And again, it's because it's gotten so much more liberal. Part of the problem with Obama, I think, was people were afraid to criticize him because the first thing you would hear was, oh, you're a racist. The man's African-American, so you have to be a racist. So there was a certain amount of fear to criticize him. But there's a tremendous amount of dedication to this guy's philosophy, because there were so many owners of so much media that thought the same way that he did.
All right. So now wait. So let me dive in with this. So now when you look at Carter and you look at Obama, two absolute disasters, treated like like they did nothing but plant daisies and roses for the American people, and you look at Reagan and Bush. The way that Reagan, if I'm not mistaken, the way that Reagan dealt with the media is that he just smiled them to death. He just loved them to death.
Humor, yes.
Yeah, he just showered them with smiles and sarcasm and jokes, and eventually, unless I'm wrong, they still didn't like him as much, but at least they respected him. With Bush, they never really respected him much, but at the same
time, they never thought he was a real president. They thought he hijacked it because of the hanging Chad thing and all that. They thought Gore should have been elected, and he was not legitimate. The same way they think about Trump today.
But wait! I want to ask you a question. With Bush, he didn't really play the media like it is that like Reagan did. When you take a look, but he still got through his presidency and he did a decent job. So in other words, he didn't let the press derail what it was that he wanted to do. When you look at Trump today, and for those who don't know you, this is John Rowland. He's been in the news business for 40 years. He knows President Trump very well. He was the top anchor in New York here for decades. And so this is who we're interviewing. He's in Miami right now. I'm not sure everybody here knows you, John. So to that level, John, you are a huge Trump advocate. You're a fan. You reach out to his office periodically. They embrace you. They love you. If you had a criticism of Trump, if you were sitting down right now in front of him and he said to you, John, I just can't get these guys to give me a fair deal, what would be your media advice to him right now today?
Stop shooting yourself in the foot.
In what way?
With the tweets and some of his remarks that aren't scripted, that are sometimes off the cuff, well meant, coming from his heart, but not the right thing to say. I don't believe that he is totally moved from being a CEO of the Trump organization to the CEO of the United States of America. He's getting there. His action against Syria was a huge step in the right direction. He may have arrived. We'll see.
How long did it take Reagan? Because when Reagan first came in, it was, oh, he's a B-level actor, he's not that smart, et cetera, so forth. How long did it take Reagan to go from being sort of rookie to seasoned pro?
Well, you have to remember he was the governor of California for some time before he became president, and he was a terrific governor. He really turned California around and pulled it back from the abyss that the Democrats had pushed it toward, and have pushed it toward today. Look at California today being run by Democrats, the problems they're having there. It took Reagan a while to become fully presidential. I think the walk in the woods with Gorbachev was a big turnaround. Obviously, between himself and Gorbachev and the Pope, they brought down the wall. That was the end of communism, the end of the Soviet Union. The press obviously had to, and they never really took him under because he's a conservative. You have to remember that. The press will never ever wrap their arms around a conservative. They simply won't. When they were saying that, well, if Judge Gorsuch doesn't get confirmed, then nobody that President Trump nominates would ever get confirmed. Of course, they will not wrap their arms around any conservative ever. It just won't happen. That's the way it is. But in order to defeat them, in order to circle around them, which is what the candidate Trump did during the campaign, was to take them on head on. However, now he doesn't have to take them on head on. He's the president. Now he can dance around them. He can kill them with kindness. He can laugh at them, not at them, but with them, make fun of himself every now and then. He's not very good at self-deprecating humor. He's tried it a few times, but that isn't his forte. This is a man who's filled with self-confidence. Some might call it egotism. If you know him, he's very, very self-confident.
Well, let me say this, because the tweeting part, and if there's anything I've ever got in trouble with my own audience, if you will, is that I don't think people necessarily understand what it is, or maybe they do understand, they just don't want to hear it, what it is that you're saying and I'm saying, because I come from the same cut as you when it comes to what he should and should not be tweeting. I mean, first of all, the tweeting part is a very powerful tool, especially with all the...
about that. As he said, he cuts through the fake and far left news and reaches millions and millions of people.
Yes, but I would like to see, John...
I'm not saying he should stop tweeting. I'm saying he should maybe choose his words a little more carefully.
Well, that's to my point. I think, the way for me, if I were sitting in front of President Trump and he was to say to me, what do you think? I would say, you've got a lot of accomplishments and you're going to have more accomplishments. And the mainstream media is never going to give you credit for them. They're never going to focus on it. For instance, Mr. President, you just had an unbelievable March jobs report, and it was skidded over as if it never even existed. The mainstream media is more focused on pulling out Alec Baldwin and his interpretation of you and Bill O'Reilly on Saturday Night Live. So you need to use that Twitter account constantly to repeat and over again the positive things that you're doing and ignore, I mean just ignore these ridiculous reports. Don't try to combat it. Just shower them with facts. Because I believe, John, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong in this, and if I'm wrong on it, just say it. But I truly believe that the way that Trump can change the narrative in the same way that Reagan used humor and charisma and love and niceness, I think the way that Trump can change the narrative is by just showering them with facts and making them and forcing them to talk about jobs, to talk about protecting people. The numbers at the border, people coming over, I mean, the LA Times, who absolutely can't stand Trump, put out an article today, we're running it on DennisMichaelLynch.com, which basically says people aren't coming through the Rio Grande anymore. It's totally changed. If he was to just flood that message, I don't care if he tweets it 5 times in one day, and doesn't give them the fuel and the gas to pour on the BS, I think he changes this narrative overnight. Your take.
Well, Mark Twain once said, you don't pick a fight with people who buy their ink by the barrel. Unfortunately, President Trump doesn't know that quote. He cannot pick a fight with the news media. He will always lose. He has to flood them with facts, as you said, but basically ignore them. What they've done in the press room in Washington, and they brought in some of these outside people through Skype, that was a very, very smart move to try to get some people other than the Washington insiders, the club. And that's another part of the president's problem. He's up against a club. He's an outsider who was not invited in to the Washington establishment club. And a big part of that club is the Washington Press Corps. They all know each other. They go to cocktail parties. If they say anything negative about somebody, they're not invited to that cocktail party. Maybe they lose that person as a contact. So he's an outsider, and he's going to be that way as long as he's in the White House. But you're absolutely right. He needs to ignore them. He needs to kill them with kindness and with facts.
John, let me put you on pause for 1 second. I want to tell our audience, this is the time now. If you want to ask John Rowland a question, I want you to go to DennisMichaelLynch.com, click on the Submit News, keep the question 1 line or 2 line, put your subject as John Rowland, get it to me quick. We're going to go to Harlan right now, who's going to give us a little update on whatever is taking place in the news, and then we'll come back to John while I'm checking out these emails. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to let John know that the response has been overwhelming in the comments. I mean, people love this segment. They love the show. So, but let's get into the news. Earlier during this broadcast, we were telling you about the ISIS terror attacks in Cairo, Egypt. But we've just received a very interesting report that the Israelis are moving forward with a shutdown of the border crossing to the Sinai Peninsula today, following warnings by Israel's anti-terrorism office of an imminent militant attack there. And they've urged citizens to leave Egypt hours before the start of Passover. The Sinai is a popular destination for many secular Israelis. Soon after the announcement, sirens wailed in parts of southern Israel, alerting residents to a rocket attack. The military said a rocket fired from Sinai exploded in southern Israel, hitting a greenhouse but causing no injuries. The Islamic State group later claimed responsibility for the attack. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, issued a statement Monday sending Israel's condolences to the families of those who were murdered in yesterday's terrorist attacks in Egypt and wishing them a quick and full recovery to the wounded. He said, "The world must unite and fight terrorism everywhere." The Israeli government issued a statement that the intelligence information showed increased activity by the Islamic State and the motivation to carry out terror attacks in different arenas at the same time. So it appears, look, we've seen attacks in London, in Sweden, in Egypt, and elsewhere in a very short period of time, and it seems like, we know for a fact that all of these have been attributed to ISIS. And so it seems that as we approach summer, they're increasing in frequency. And I can remember in the summer of last year, in 2016, there were so many terror attacks attributed to ISIS. It seems like this is almost seasonal. It's horrible. But the Israelis are stepping up their own defenses and actually shutting the border at least on a temporary basis to keep ISIS at bay. So that's the breaking news that we have there. Are we ready for questions? Or
I'm getting bombarded.
Okay.
All right, John, I got a lot of questions for you, so I'm going to ask you to keep your, because we're also running out of time here, I'm going to ask you to keep your answers as short as you possibly can, so this way I get as many in as possible. All right? Hold on one second. Let me start here. Ken asks, how do networks organize and keep their liberal agenda on the air?
Well, because they truly believe it. Their bosses believe it. The reporters believe it. The writers believe it. And they think that they're in the right. And they continue to believe that way. As long as the advertisers keep advertising, they're going to keep sending out the same message.
All right, next one comes in from Lori. She wants to know, has CNN always been this bad?
No. When CNN first started, matter of fact, my old boss was one of the ones who helped put it together. Remember Ted Kavanaugh, who I worked for at Channel 5, a brilliant guy, and would beat the heck out of you if you didn't get both sides to every story. CNN, when it first started, was very objective, down the middle, but along the they got lost along the way. And then they became what we used to call the Clinton News Network, and they are very, very liberal to this day. It's a shame.
What did it say? Tom says, would he be able to be a news anchor today? Would you be able, in this environment, John, to be a news anchor today in the same way that you were back when did you leave? Early 2000s?
Well, I left in 2004 or 5. I started there in 1969. I would be able to be an anchorman today, but I'd probably last one night.
All right, John, we have another one here from Lisa. Lisa says, you're going to love this one, John. If Mr. Rowland knows Donald Trump so well, why can't he set up a meeting between Trump and DML?
Well, maybe I better work a little harder in getting that done.
It hasn't been a lack of trying, right, John? All right, what else do we have here?
Is that a question from you?
No, John, I can't even keep up the questions right now, man. I can't even come in. All right, so I got one from Betty. Betty said, I have thoroughly enjoyed John Rowland on Truth today. Would John ever consider being on DML like this? If not as a regular, at least once a week or 2 weeks. He's very engaging, and I love listening to him. Thank you, DML and Harlan, for a great show today. I'll tell you what, obviously, John's going to be on with us quite often. But one of the things, John, you're going to have to do today, if you can, or sometime over the next week, you got to go and get yourself a pair of the Apple iPhones and plug it into your computer, because what happens is when you're talking, there's a tremendous echo because the microphones and computers suck. So if you would have had, like, the headphones that you listen to an iPod with or something like that, we would have much better. So if you could get out and get that today. All right. There was another person who asked, I don't know.
Send me a check for them and I'll be on my way.
I'll send you a check. All right. I'll send you a check. It's in the mail. It's mail. All right. Rowland is R-O-L-A-N-D, right?
Yes.
Okay. I had written some questions down here in the early going before I started getting hit. Somebody, so I apologize for not having the name. How is Trump doing so far? What do you think? How would you rank him?
Well, I think he's doing fantastic. I mean, look at what he's accomplished with the executive orders, the judge being sworn in, the bold action that he took, the perfect action everyone's saying against Syria, gathering up now off the North Korean area with 100,000 tons of diplomacy, as one ambassador called it. I think we're in good hands.
All right, another one. Somebody wrote here, again, I didn't write down the name because they're coming in too quick. Have you ever met Hillary Clinton? And if so, what do you think?
I have never had the pleasure of meeting her, no.
Okay, so you don't have to have that. Somebody asked about North Korea. Here, do you think North Korea is President Trump's top concern?
Well, I think it's the world's top concern, which means that yes, it is President Trump's top concern, side by side with ISIS, but at the moment, with a man who's obviously unstable running the country. Remember, he had his own brother killed. This guy is insane.
Yeah.
If he gets his hands on the nuke, that's big trouble.
Yep. John, I'm going to go with two more questions, and I'm going to let you go. We have here from Patricia. It says, John, how can we, the average citizen, support President Trump? Boycott mainstream media? Protest? What?
Well, I don't think boycotts really ever amount to much. I would just send them letters of support, send them phone calls of support. Do it in a positive way, not a negative way. But just let him know, and your local representatives, your congressman, your senator, let them know that you think he's doing a great job, and that they better support him, or they will answer the next time they're up for re-election.
You know, John, I'm going to add something to that, too, because we ran this yesterday. On Sundays, I'm responsible for operating the DennisMichaelLynch.com website. And one of the questions, I always get questions like that. And I once interviewed Brett Bozell III. He's always on Fox News. He is the founder of the Media Research Center in Virginia. He's a conservative, and so his every single day is trying to combat and keep honest, if you could believe that term, the mainstream media. And so I had asked him the same thing. What is it that the average Joe or Jane can do in an effort to try to help the conservative message? Trump wasn't president at the time. And he said, listen, it doesn't matter who the president is. The rules have changed, and we've sort of alluded to this already. He said the most powerful weapon that any citizen has in their pocket is at their fingertip, really. It's called the share button. And he explained that a TV commercial only has 14% believability. But if you take that same television commercial and you put it on Facebook and you share it, the believability goes up to 76%, simply because you shared it. And so I went back to him and said, well, wait a second, because I get people all the time saying, hey, I shared this and I shared that. My liberal friends tell me I'm crazy and all this other stuff. And he said, listen, even if somebody doesn't reshare or they don't respond or if they respond negatively, you are still putting the message in their inbox. You are forcing them to see something that isn't being delivered on the nightly news or in the papers or on all these different websites, these politically driven liberal websites, which, you know, we talked about CNN 2 seconds ago. I bring this up all the time, John. When you look at CNN's television ratings versus that of Fox, it's a joke. You know, O'Reilly will get 4 million people, Anderson Cooper 1 million if he's lucky. The problem being is that CNN gets about 300 million unique visitors per month to their website, and Fox only gets about 150 million to 120 million. So those little clips on Anderson Cooper, although people aren't seeing them through their television, they're seeing it through their phone, through their iPads, and through their computers at a much greater rate than they are seeing Bill O'Reilly. So that's why it is so important for people to share. I mean, on something like this, on this show here today, hit the damn share button. Use your greatest tool. Just don't keep it to yourself. All right, so John, that's it. I'm going to give you the final minute, and I'm going to bid you adieu, and we'll have you back obviously sooner than later. And then I'm going to talk here to Harlan for a second. I'm going to wrap up the show. What say you, my buddy?
Well, I'll say what I said at the beginning. I congratulate you and Harlan and the rest of your team for your hard work and dedication to try to spread the truth through the noise of the fake and the phony news out there. It is not an easy job, but I congratulate you for trying, and I wish you all the best. Keep it up.
I appreciate it so much, John. I appreciate it so much. In fact, I will send you a check for that comment as well as the headphones. All right, buddy. Good seeing you as always. You look great. Keep eating right and enjoy the Florida sun, but not too much. All right.
Thank you, Dennis. Great to see you.
All right, we love you. All right. All right, Harlan, have any other updates before I tail out the show?
Another bit of good news, economic news for President Donald Trump, where Toyota is announcing that they're investing $1.3 billion in their Kentucky plant in Georgetown, Kentucky. And so that will help to sustain the 8,200 jobs that are there and to over time expand their presence. So that's, he's racking up the wins with Fortune 500 companies, from Carrier to Ford to GM to Toyota. I mean, it is amazing what he's done in such a short period of time have them reinvest in the American economy to retool so that these jobs stay here instead of moving on to Mexico and elsewhere. So just another example.
Yep. Listen, with time, all this stuff just will keep on coming to the surface and to the surface and to the surface. We talk about it here almost every single day. In time, the mainstream media, and that was the focus of today's show, the mainstream media will not hold the power it does, because even the liberals who tune into CNN and NBC and CBS and all these other different places, when they start seeing their lives go into a more positive direction, as I said over the weekend, the 470,000 jobs that were added in March, they didn't just go to all conservatives, they went to liberals as well. And so now people who didn't have a job now have jobs. And that's going to impact their life tremendously. And in the same way that Reagan wound up getting his next 4 years, if Trump continues to do what he's doing, he's a shoo-in. Because maybe somebody won't ever admit to their liberal counterpart or their liberal buddy that they pulled the lever for Trump. They're going to vote their wallet, because that's usually what people do. They vote their wallet.
That's exactly what people did in this past election. I mean, a lot of people were closeted Trump supporters. They didn't want to admit it to friends and family because they were afraid of retribution. And even a lot of union members. I mean, I kept saying this, that there'd be a lot of blue-collar union workers in Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin that would come out and vote for Donald Trump, and that would decide the election. And what happened? These people did, because they were tired of seeing their jobs be sent overseas. And he's credit to President Donald Trump. He said he would do it, and he's actually followed through.
He is. He is. Now, a couple other things, a couple of notes. First of all, very important notes that you need to know. All right. Number one, we're going to start moving the show to 11:30. So it's going to be between 11:30 and 12:30. And if you like today's format, I've got good news for you. Over the weekend, Harlan and I decided on how it is that we are going to lay out the next 30 days. And here's what we've decided. That every day between 11:30 and 12:30, we will have this. It will be a walk and talk. Now, the walk and talk part is going to, I'll show you that in a couple of seconds, because we're going to make it legitimate in terms of walk and talk. But we'll get there. Every single day, from Monday to Friday, in this hour, we will have a guest. We will have a guest. Like I just had John Rowland on, and the other day we had Ryan Morrow from the Clarion Project. I'm working on another guest tomorrow. I'm trying to get a general to come in here to talk about everything that's going on. If we don't get him, we'll have somebody else coming in. Every single day, we will try to have a guest. May even turn out to be that maybe our guest once in a while will be one of you. So that is the format we're going to take, where Harlan will always keep you abreast of what's taking place in the news as the hours go by. But for the most part, we're going to have a very casual, meaningful interview like we did today with John Rowland, who is a legendary news anchor. In fact, I'll tell you this. When Hannity gave me the 1 hour special about my movie, They Come to America Too, he said, who do you have that you would like to bring in as guests? And I said, people in the movie. I said, well, I'd like to have John Rowland. And Hannity was like, really? You know John Rowland? I was like, yeah, I know John Rowland. He's like, have him come in. It was amazing, because when I brought Rowland into the green room, it was like Hannity had seen, like a little kid, and he was asking Rowland all these questions. John Rowland is a legend here in New York. For those of you who are around the country, he is a legend here in New York, and he is known for just asking the tough questions, being a straight shooter, never lying into that camera, always telling the truth. I hope that sounds a little bit familiar to you. He is my mentor when it comes to all of this. So to that degree, we will be having those sort of interviews every day. Then at nighttime, for the truth, it's going to be more of that newsy sort of style that we have been trying to develop here in terms of some monologue, and then the Harlan on the Hill report, and then Scarlett's report in terms of what she's like tonight. She's going to be reporting on the 5 countries who are grabbing the majority of the foreign aid that we are giving out every single year. Stuff that they're not telling you on the news that you need to know and that you should know, make you smarter and more in tune with what's going on. Have you picked out what your Harlan on the Hill is going to be at tonight?
I have. I'm going to be talking, well, I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm going to be talking about the increasing tax burden liberal states in this country are imposing on the American people. It's something that people are so focused on federal politics, they don't even see what's happening at the state level.
And then, of course, we're going to read your emails, and we'll probably replay like a very quick clip of whatever John is that he had to say here tonight. So that's what we're going to be trying to do again, and that's tonight at 8:30. You don't get that on Facebook. You only get that on DML, the DML website on DennisMichaelLynch.com. If you go there at 8:30, or if you sign up for our alerts, that you get that through the DML app. Or if you don't have one of those smartphones, you could simply just make a text to 40404, and then what you write in your text is follow at Real Dennis Lynch, and you'll get the alert on your phone when we're going live. But you will be able to watch that, and I think tonight, if it's not tonight, or at least be tomorrow night, we are going to be testing our chat tool, which Mark developed in Iowa. We're going to see if we could put that on there tonight. I know it's going to look a lot better on desktop than it will on mobile, so if you could watch tonight on your computer versus on your cell phone, you would probably be behooved to do so. And if we don't have it there tonight, we'll definitely be trying it tomorrow night. Keep in mind it's beta, but at least you'll be able to communicate with each other. And then, so Harlan, I'll let you jump off. I'm going to spend the last 5 minutes, because we're going to give you a full 1 hour. I'm going to show you how it is that this is going to become an official walk and talk. Because when we start to interview people, let me get rid of this. I don't need this anymore. All right. So when we interview people, here we go. So today I had the young men, Tim and Harlan, bring down my treadmill, because this weekend I swore that I would start. Can you see me in that camera? Can I be seen? Yep. You could probably pan out a little. Zoom out a little. Okay, go up. There you go. So it's sort of slow right now. Here, hit the plus speed for me, Harlan, if you can. Or actually, yeah, just give it to me. I'll hold it while I do it. Thanks, buddy. Yeah. So you see, we have this walking treadmill. So while we interview people, I'll be sitting here interviewing these people for the full half hour, because the fact of the matter is I'm just not getting my walking in. And so for the last 2 days, since I got totally frustrated on Saturday, for those of you who were with me on Saturday from my home, I opened up my refrigerator. You saw what we raided. I threw out all the pepperoni sticks and all the salami sticks, although that's not true if you call throwing out, meaning I ate it. I sort of said a goodbye to all the bad food. I told Mary we could only have egg whites and whatever. So I'm on this kick. I want to lose all my weight. I think right now I'm 238 pounds. I want to get down to 195 by the time it's to put a bathing suit on. So I'm going to be doing this every day while we interview. So I didn't do it today because we were running a little bit late here and John's sound wasn't the best. I didn't want to distract with this. But this is what we're going to do in a walk and talk. 1 half hour, 45 minutes every single day. I'm getting it in and eating better. So if you feel the same way, you should be on a treadmill or you should be out walking and listening to us. Maybe if you don't see us, at least you could hear us. And that's the way it should be. All right? So we will catch you. I could probably go a little faster than this. This is like geriatric speed, right? I'm not that old yet. All right. So anyway, we will see you later tonight at 8:30. In fact, if we can, we're also going to try to see if we can't get our show out at 4:30. I don't know if it will happen today, but anyhow. All right. Until then, go to DennisMichaelLynch.com, get articles all day long, and that's that. All right. So until later tonight, may God bless you. May God bless our troops and our president and these United States, and Mr. John Rowland, who is a fantastic human being. Adios, amigos.